Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the EcomXFactor podcast. In today's episode we have with us Tim Swart. Tim is an email marketing specialist and funnel strategist who helps entrepreneurs grow their online businesses. Over the past year, Tim has generated more than $1 million for his clients using dynamic emails and different funnels. This talk covered a lot of different topics and practical advice. We talked about copywriting, email marketing, and quiz funnels, which is a very, very interesting topic with a lot of potential. It's actually something that we've been testing for a while now in our own stores, and it's showing very good results. And after this talk, I got a few more ideas, which I already started testing. Definitely something that you should check out, even if you're only starting with dropshipping or if you have a branded e-commerce store. That's it, guys. Please enjoy this conversation with Tim Swart. Hi Tim, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on here.
Awesome, it's my pleasure. Thank you for waking up so early.
No problem. Sorry for the messy hair.
It's all good. It's all good. You look
7:30 here in Nashville.
You look awesome. It's all good. It's all good. How have you been these days with the COVID? How is work? How is life?
That's a good question. I've had some ups and downs. So, I've been staying in quarantine. Nashville's been shut down for the past couple months, but we're actually just starting to open up. So that'll be interesting. But, so actually one of my biggest clients I've worked with in the past is in the ground transportation industry. He owns a marketing agency for limousine business owners. And so they obviously were hit really hard. So I lost some business there. But, then it kind of presented new opportunities, and I've been able to meet new people because it forced me to network online. And so I've had a little bit of ups and downs, like I'm sure everyone else has.
Everybody, I guess it's interesting times, and also an opportunity to reinvent your business and reinvent yourself, generally speaking.
Totally, yeah.
So what are you guys doing mainly these days? What type of clients do you have these days?
So I mainly work with service providers. I'm actually, historically, I've been, doing a lot of done-for-you work. So a little bit about me. I worked for a small digital marketing agency for about 14, 15 months. And I really got into copywriting and email marketing. And so when I left and went out on my own, those were kind of my strengths. And I was providing a lot of done-for-you, like email sequences and sort of product launches and stuff like that. But I'm a one-man. Sorry?
Awesome. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Can you elaborate a bit what is done for you? Because some people might not understand the term.
Sure. Yeah. So what I mean by that is it's kind of like I kind of been behaving like a marketing department for other businesses. So I will lead the strategy and we'll go through like a game plan, and then I'll actually carry out the deliverables. I will actually, write the copy. I'll set up, email funnels, and instead of the business owner, doing it themselves, I'll provide,
I see.
The creation.
Cool. And when you said that you started in the agency with you mainly did email marketing and copywriting in the agency, and did you have like a mentor, or how did you learn? How did you hone your skills?
Yeah, I had a great mentor. It's funny. I started as an intern, and it was a small agency of 5 people at the time. And in the beginning, I kind of wore like a whole bunch of hats, right? So I started as an intern, and then I was our account manager. So I was managing client relations, and then as our team got smaller, my responsibilities got bigger. And my boss, I was fortunate enough for him to invest in my education, and I got my hands dirty in a lot of things, and I got to experience a wide array of, growing a small business and marketing. And he sent me to a copywriting like one-day intensive with Jennifer Hootie, who owns Conscious Copy, which is a copywriting agency, and she's worked with people like Dean Graziosi and
cool.
Brendan Bouchard and Billie Jean and some like the
Nice.
really big names. And so I had like an 8-hour one-on-one, or it was like 3 of us, and she totally changed the way I thought about marketing and copy and messaging, and it literally like changed my life. Like,
cool, that's
professionally
amazing.
speaking.
I envy you.
It like it was great, and until then I thought, you know, like I read a couple copywriting books, like The Ultimate Sales Letter. I highly recommend. My boss actually made me go home and read that book and come back and write him a response on how I was going to use those things. But there's a lot behind the curtain of marketing and copy, and I didn't realize that there was so much more to like persuasion than the actual words themselves.
Yeah.
And Jennifer really opened my mind to, you know, behind the scenes of marketing and what makes good copy. Copy good.
Can you mind elaborating like the 3 main takeaways from that day or something like that, just to give an idea of what you mean by saying behind the curtains?
Sure. So, you know, I was expecting to talk about it was an 8-hour intensive, and since then I've gone to a couple of her workshops. They're really great. I was expecting to talk about like copy and headlines and you know, email strategy. We didn't talk about copywriting like once. So we really talked about and we were there representing a new client of ours at the time. So she really talked about like the market and our client's audience, and everything was about them. We talked about market awareness. So I don't know if your audience is familiar with like Eugene Schwartz and like the five levels of, you know, market and product awareness, and just really like narrowing down on, okay, who are these people who we want to become our customers? What have they experienced in life? What are they struggling with? What are their pains and frustrations? What are their desires?
Yeah.
And we started there for like 5 hours, which you can't cover everything in 5 hours, of course.
Sure.
But we started there, and then we molded his business around that. We wrapped it around his market, and just totally working backwards. And it was so new to me at the time, and I don't know if that answered your question, but it was a lot.
For sure. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like also other guests that I had on the show, and some people expect to get more of the tactics, but at the end of the day, whenever I talk with people who really understand marketing, it's all the time we talk about understanding the customer and understanding the avatar and understanding his desires and understanding his pains. Some people focus too much on the tactics. So which word, how long should my headline be? Which word should I use? But you need to understand your customer before you do this. And this is exactly what you learned and what you said. And it definitely answered my question. But did you draw any from that session? Did you create any template or any rules of thumbs that you could use, or it just improved your framework of thinking about the customers?
You know, at the time, you know, our client was starting a new business, and so it was the very early stages, and he had, you know, this big YouTube audience, and he built up a ton of goodwill for his audience, and he was just trying to monetize it. And so a lot of what we came out of that day with was the framework and a business model. And so in terms of like a template, I remember, you know, we drew it out on a big whiteboard, and we created a value ladder for him, and and really constructed his offer and the products he was gonna you know, offer to his audience. And so I have that visual stuck in my mind, and I took that back with me, and just really visualizing the the customer journey and where you want to take your audience from beginning to end, and, you know, keep monetizing. And
can you elaborate a bit about value ladder? Because I think it's a very important concept, and I'm not sure that many people are familiar with the concept and totally understand it. So when you say value ladder, let's say for an e-com store, so can you give a practical example of how would you construct the value ladder for an e-commerce store?
Sure. So, assuming, let's say you sell more than one product, maybe you have a wide array of products. Maybe you have, if you're selling, if you're in like the golf niche, maybe you sell tees for like 50 cents for a box of 200 tees. I'm not a golfer, so I have no idea if that's real. But for the sake of, example, let's say, you're selling something really inexpensive, and then, you might be selling a $1,000 golf club. Depending on where someone is, and sorry, this is a lot can go into this answer, so I'm just trying to be careful with my words. But most people, unless they're already super familiar with either you or your brand, which I know e-commerce is such a huge ocean, and you're competing with hundreds of thousands or millions of people selling stuff online. Most people aren't going to be ready to make a huge financial commitment when they come in contact with your brand. And so think of a value ladder as like a staircase. And at the bottom of the staircase, you have either a free product, or maybe you're selling those golf tees at 50 cents, right? And then after that, you can kind of, it becomes more easy to sell them more expensive products as they get indoctrinated into your brand, and they've had success with your products in the past. So when I say value ladder, I mean kind of like stacking your offers from like least expensive to most expensive, and driving the majority of the traffic up the ladder, because most people aren't going to be ready to just make a large financial commitment. Some will, and you want to capitalize on that, but that's kind of in a nutshell.
I agree. And this is why a lot of e-commerce stores, they also tried the free plus shipping model. So they say, okay, I'll give you the product for free, just a sample. Let's say they are selling cosmetics, so they are going to send out just a sample of the cosmetics, of the serum, for example, and only charge for the shipping, which is going to be like $7. And they assume that the customer is going to be happy with delivery.
I just did that with this.
Oh, you got it already? I want to read it.
I waited like 2 months.
That's awesome. Did you start reading it already?
Yeah, I did. And I like it. I really like his, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
But he, touching on what you talked about earlier about, people get hyper-focused on the tactics without understanding like the hidden, concepts and the hidden layers of strategy. He opens up the book with that, where, hey, like, traffic, best practices change all the time. Facebook and Google and YouTube are constantly updating their algorithm. So instead of, getting married to one tactic, one small piece of technical like hacks, really understand, really understand what's going on from like a timeless perspective, like timeless strategies. And so it's like an evergreen book. And I think that's his whole goal, is to make this valuable forever.
Awesome.
Because,
I'm dying to get this book. And for those of you who don't know, Tim showed a book by Russel Bronson, which is basically, I guess he's the biggest marketing guru these days. And to be honest, whenever I speak with anybody, any podcast, or when I speak with people, we are just paraphrasing what Russell said. Like the value ladder is a concept by Russell, and the offer stacking is a concept by Russell, and everything. He's a marketing genius. So whoever, I really suggest checking out his .com secrets book and the expert secrets, and obviously the new traffic secrets book. And I'm not an affiliate, but
yeah, neither am I. But he's a great guy to He's a great guy to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Keep an eye on him and listen to what he says. And he's a fantastic marketer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's
for
really
sure.
good. He's really good, and he also uses the free plus shipping concept with the book. Obviously, you purchase the book, you only pay for the shipping, and then he sends you the book, and he sends also a USB device and another book for free, and he over delivers. And once he over delivers, it makes you feel more comfortable in spending on the next offer. And it's, in his case, it means joining the ClickFunnels software. So it's all about, as you said, having a value ladder and over-delivering all the time in order to gain the trust of the customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Cool. So you see, when you work with your customers, so what do you think is the biggest, like what advice you give them that really changes the game? You think that most of the customers, the problem is copywriting related or not understanding the customer enough, or is it in the tactics? Or what do you see often like a mistake that solopreneurs or people that are just building their e-commerce business are doing? Like what mistakes are often and you think that should be corrected?
Sure. I think a lot of people who I've worked with in the past, one of the number one question is typically, where do I start?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's, what the heck am I doing wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Because the stuff is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And, great marketers who sell marketing products make it sound
Mm-hmm.
easy. And it's just not. And I think a lot of people, especially people who are starting out,
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Russel Bronson, someone to follow, a lot of people are following the wrong people.
Mm-hmm.
And they get really hyper-focused on, what they should be doing.
Yeah.
Without having an understanding of the big picture of like marketing and selling psychology. And so usually when someone is like, I don't know where to start, or I don't know what isn't working, what I found to be very helpful is to just go back to square one and just focus on two things, which is the market. So who they're selling to, what problem they're trying to solve. And a lot of times, if that's messed up, if that's out of whack, then nothing following is going to work. And I'm not super well versed with like drop shipping and stuff. So I know, if you're watching this, maybe you're selling, like you're drop shipping an iPhone case or something, and you might not think this applies to you, but it still does, because it's going to affect, how you market your product no matter what it is. So usually I'll go back to square one with people and I say, okay, who are you selling to? What problem are you solving? And then how are you going to solve that? And a lot of people don't understand what an offer is. They don't know the difference between an offer and a product. And just understanding that this one key difference is a game changer and can really be the one thing holding, you back from meeting your financial goals with online marketing. And so the way I explain it to people is, the product is your deliverable. When I explain, so like if you're selling an iPhone case, then your product is a case. If you're selling an information product, maybe your product is video modules and, worksheets, like an online course. And the offer, I like to say, think of it as a transaction. So what are they getting in return for what they give you? So instead of saying, here, buy my course for $1,000, you say
buy your freedom for $1,000, for example.
Sorry?
Buy your freedom for $1,000.
Sure. Yeah. You're selling them what they want. They don't want the course. They want the result the course gets them. And there are things you can do, like sweetening the deal. So when you see like guarantees, it's more of like a conversation. So instead of saying buy my course, like you said, buy your freedom,
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I really think you're going to enjoy this. I'm actually going to offer it to you for 50% off because we're running a special this month. And, you know, I'm so confident that you're going to love this and it's going to help you do X, Y, and Z that,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, if you don't like it, just give it back.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, no questions asked. All of that together, wrapped together is the offer. And so that's very powerful instead of just selling a course. And I actually don't think I'm doing it justice, but really, you know, starting with the market and the offer, I think is huge for people starting out because they see things at the surface level. And I mean, at least I did when I was starting out, because you don't know what you don't know. And you think, you know, you need certain things and it's easy to get caught up in the rat race of do. But if you just take 10 steps back and really focus in on just a couple core, you know, marketing and sales concepts, and then you can, you know, focus on the tactics.
Agree. Yeah, it makes total sense. And I just want to make a small addition for what you said regarding the offer. So a lot of dropshippers, they don't know how to differentiate themselves from the competitors because they are all selling the same posture corrector or they are all selling the same serum. So one thing is telling them in the messaging, like you said, you don't buy a serum, you buy beauty, for example. So this is one aspect. And the other aspect is stacking like real value. You can add an ebook about facial care. You can add a free sample of a different facial cream. Let's say you're selling the serum. Or you can add a checklist of how to keep your face clean or whatever. So stacking and adding more stuff to the offer in order to make the perceived value higher. And what you have to keep in mind is just you should look at the page from the perspective of your customer, and you should ask yourself, is this offer a no-brainer? That it makes sense for me, that it make no sense for me not to take this offer? And this is what you're supposed to aim for, creating a no-brainer offer.
Totally, yeah. And if you just, you know, look around, that's what every successful business does. They're or at least, you know, selling things online. Everything's bundled together for the most part. And yeah, like you said, a no-brainer offer, an irresistible offer. It should be. There is no reason not to make the buying decision, and a lot of that is removing risk, which goes back to the guarantee.
I agree.
And the guarantee is part of your offer. It's all of that together is your offer. It's I'm giving you this in exchange for money, and it's more than just the deliverable.
I totally agree. I actually wrote a blog post about this, and the image that I used was an equation which wrote perceived value should be higher than perceived risk. And if this happens, you're going to get a sale. So it's just a two-sided equation. If the perceived value is bigger than the risk, so they are going to buy from you. And this is what you're aiming to do.
Totally. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, go back to the subject that you spoke about before regarding understanding the customer. So what tactical methods do you use in order to better understand the customer? Do you go like to Reddit forums and read what they say, or do you interview people that are potential customers? Like, what do you suggest in order to further understand the customer?
Sure. So that's a great question. And for me, I usually, as silly as it sounds, I'll just start Googling stuff to start because it's the lowest barrier to entry. It's the easiest thing to do. And that's what I'll do to start. I'll just Google stuff. I like Quora. Facebook groups are a great way to kind of see how people behave. And but at the end of the day, I don't think anything compares to having a conversation. And the more people you can talk to, like one-on-one, the more you'll understand the market that you're in. Even if you talk to 10 people, and your market is, 1 million people, it's still going to give you an understanding of some real tangible data on what people are going through, the kind of language they use. So really, conversations is the number one thing. But I think the coolest thing, and what I'm really into now, is using quizzes. Cool. They are a brilliant way to do research for your market. And I could talk all day about quiz funnels, but
yeah. So we have time. Let's start.
Sure. So, okay, I'm just trying to think of where to start. They're very versatile. So when I say a quiz funnel, I mean basically like a survey, something where you're giving people questions and answer choices, and there's different ways you can do this. You can use it for top, middle, or bottom of funnel, meaning you can use it strictly for research and send it to your prospects and ask them questions that are going to help you determine what their challenges are, what their pains are, what their desires are. You can also use it for customers on how to recommend the next product in a value ladder, all sorts of things. I think maybe for this conversation, it would be best to talk about how it's great for research and lead generation. So they're really attractive lead magnets. So for those of you who may not know what a lead magnet is, it's pretty much a word for giving something away for free in exchange for an email address. Yeah. So instead of charging, $3 for a presentation, or heck, maybe $100 for a presentation, you ask for an email address, and it's a great way to build your email list so that you can acquire more leads and make more sales. But I think a lot of people, when they're building out lead magnets, they're like, oh God, I need a checklist, or they think of like a popular lead magnet, and then they kind of rush through it and they make it quickly. And a lot of times what ends up happening is people are making these digital assets that don't actually add a ton of value to their market. And a quiz is it's almost like, I hate the term hacks, but it's almost like a hack, because you're not creating necessarily like something of value, like right off the front, but it's fun for people to go through, and it's really attractive, and it's easy to drive traffic to a quiz, and there's just so many things you can do with it.
So let's focus for a second on the strategy, and then I'd like to ask a few questions regarding the tactics, like how many steps do you use in a quiz, or how do you normally, but would you say like a quiz is the lead magnet? I mean, after the quiz, do you want to give them an asset, or in your belief, just letting them enjoying the quiz is enough for them to trust you, and this is the end goal, the quiz?
That's a really good question. And there is literally an unlimited way, unlimited ideas that you can use a quiz or a survey for. So what a lot of people do is, like you said, they'll ask for an email address after you. So say you create like a journey of self-discovery quiz. Discover your number one growth hack for growing your e-com store. They go through the questions, and then it says, okay, processing your score. Please enter your email address, and we'll send you your quiz results. Right there, that's a lead immediately. So you have that email address. And so in that case, the quiz is the lead magnet itself. But what you can do is you can use those answers as a way to send a specific lead magnet, or I don't want to get confusing by using that word over and over. You can use those those answers as a way to determine what you should send that person.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you have an ebook, you have a video series, and or let's say you have three videos,
Mm-hmm.
and each training video talks about a different subject,
Mm-hmm.
or a different experience level.
Yeah.
Depending on what someone answers in the quiz, you send them to that video. And so it's a great way to just immediately segment your leads based on whatever you want.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the key word here is segmenting. And as you said, it's a great way to segment, and then you can send the offer, the relevant offer by mail or in the results page. So even if you're doing e-commerce, so let's say there are guys that are selling supplements. So they are going to ask the customer in the quiz, what is your body type? What is your consumption of protein every day? Which flavors do you like, etc., etc., etc. And then they are going to offer a product that is related to their answers. And this is this is also personalization. And obviously, you can also afterwards send them emails and follow-ups that are specific to their needs. And this increases your chances of retaining the customers and getting the conversion. So it's a very powerful segmentation tool, as you said.
Yeah, it's insane. It's honestly, I mean, people have used quiz funnels and survey funnels for a few years now, but I think it's becoming a little more mainstream because it's just so powerful. And I feel like the old school direct response marketers are rolling around kicking themselves in the grave right now because they're like, oh my God, if only I had that.
Yeah.
It's really insane what you can do. And like you said, segmenting your email list and sending them targeted emails.
Yeah. Which tools do you use for this? Do you use any specific tools for the quizzes?
Yeah, so I use something called Leads Hook.
Okay.
LEADS HOOK.
Uh-huh.
And there are a couple different softwares. I've dabbled in, actually I started with one, and then a friend of mine told me about Leads Hook.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the most capable software I've seen or used.
Mm-hmm.
And like the possibilities are endless. There are so many things you can do. Something I'm actually creating, working on a quiz right now, and you can actually create dynamically generated sales letters. So you can create custom fields for each question.
Yeah.
And for those of you, if you're like unfamiliar with email marketing or you're brand new, custom fields is basically like, think of like first name, last name, email address, phone number. Those are like your standard fields that a company will ask you for, so that they can contact you. Custom fields might be, experience level, whatever they're asking, whatever data they're trying to acquire from you. So in this quiz, I ask things like, what is your biggest challenge or frustration when it comes to turning leads into clients? So I'm asking them a question on what they struggle with. When they tell me what they struggle with, I immediately capture that data. Yeah. And then when they finish the quiz, I send them a sales letter, and the copy has their custom fields inside of it.
Nice.
So it will literally call out their specific problem that they're dealing with in the sales letter. So it's super tailored and custom, and it allows you to have like one-on-one conversations with your prospects. And
it makes a lot of sense.
I'm a nerd, but I think that's
it's awesome. It's awesome. It makes a lot of sense. Just to give an example, so we're asking the customers, what is your bra size or dress size? And this can also be a custom field. So we know that we have a segment of customers who have like a bra size of double D, and then we know to send them specific bra that are, and the whole conversation and the whole message is related to the bra size. So it's kind of similar to your example, but e-commerce specific.
Totally, yeah.
And let's talk a bit about the funnel, how the whole funnel and the tactics. So would you drive the Facebook ad directly to the quiz, and then how long would you do the quiz, and how many segments would you aim for, like best practices regarding the quiz?
Sure. I think it totally depends on your business, how many products you're selling, you know, your experience level. If you're just starting out, just in general with online marketing stuff, I typically like to tell people to start very basic, and then once you have traction going with something, then you can get a little more advanced, because there's really no ceiling to how intricate you can make, you know, sales funnels, and especially with quizzes. But I would say to work backwards. So think about how many products you have, and think about your goals. Because believe it or not everyone's goal is to, you know, make a certain, you know, percentage increase of sales, you know, month over month or whatever. So think about your goals, think about what products and how many products you have, and then I don't want to get too sort of advanced, but I like to think about the levels of awareness, meaning unaware, need aware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware. So you're identifying if people are familiar with their need to buy your product, and if they know about you. And so I'll match those segments up with my offers. So I'm trying to best answer your question, but maybe to start, just have what I call buckets. So if you're selling 3 products, have 3 buckets. So three categories that people are going to end up in, and then create your questions from those.
I see.
So if you have 3 products, maybe you have you know, a 9-question quiz, and depending on their answers, you know, you're going to recommend product A, product B, or product C. And just kind of brain dump that and map it out on a whiteboard or on a notepad. And then you can ask questions that are going to lead to your product being the solution to their problem.
I understand. Cool. And do you think, like, in your opinion, how many questions do you think that the longer the quiz is better, or like 9 is kind of a sweet spot? Obviously, it depends on the market, but like as a rule of thumb, do you think people should aim for 5 steps or 9 steps, or more or less? What is your take on regarding the length of the quiz?
Sure. You know, an easy answer, I would say stick around 6 questions. But to be honest, the more questions you have, the more qualified your lead is going to be.
Yes, I agree.
So you're going to have fewer people complete the quiz. If you have a 40-question quiz, which a lot of people do, you know, you're not going to have a ton of people. Most people are not going to go through all 40 questions, right? So you're going to wind up getting a smaller number of leads. But the leads that do go through the entire quiz, you're going to have so much data on them. They're going to be so qualified because you know they're super engaged. They're going to be more likely to be open, you know, to what you're offering them at the end of the quiz. But an easy answer, I think typically 5 or 6 questions is usually recommended. It's a nice balance.
Cool.
Yeah.
And regarding like technical aspects of this, do you set the Facebook pixel to fire after a certain amount of questions, or Google Analytics to fire an event after a few questions, or what is your take like from a technical aspect on the quiz? Or you don't really track the quiz in, like, the questions in the quiz? You get what I mean?
Yeah. I know there are capabilities to do exactly what you're talking about, meaning you're tracking you're gathering their data as they go through the quiz, and then you're leveraging it for other platforms like Facebook or Google. But for me personally, I just like to leverage all the data in real time from my email list
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
with the custom fields.
Mm-hmm.
But I know there are capabilities where you can put the pixel in different stages.
Yeah.
What I would recommend, and I'm not the most technically inclined person, so I'm not going to speak on something that I'm not like super confident in. So that's why I keep it basic with just capturing
Pixel
the
firing, yeah. Mm-hmm. Makes
custom
sense.
fields. But what you can do, a great way to start is put your Facebook pixel on the confirmation page.
Mm-hmm.
That way you can track, who completed the quiz and who made it to the very end.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to want to target people who gave up after the second question and didn't finish the quiz.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree.
The more valuable data is the people who actually engaged with you.
Mm-hmm.
So put a pixel on the thank you page of the quiz, and that's what I would recommend. But the sky's the limit.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and maybe what I suggested is kind of an overkill. I wouldn't suggest starting with that if you don't have a lot of data. But one thing I do like doing, and I suggest doing, so if you already segmented the customers and you have different email lists, so you can integrate them to Facebook with a custom audience of the certain segment. This makes a lot of sense. You can also build lookalikes from these and also use them as a custom audience for retargeting and remarketing. So using an integration between your ESP to Facebook makes a lot of sense, and it's most of the ESPs, they do allow this possibility.
Totally, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just the power of just knowing that not every lead should be treated the same is going to put you above so many people. And so, yeah, segmenting them immediately with the quiz and then multiple touch points on email, Facebook. Yeah.
Cool. Do you have any examples of like off the bat that you can think of e-commerce stores that you've seen that do good quizzes or the back end of your quiz, like for people to be able to see, or you want to share, maybe send to me later good examples of e-commerce quizzes?
Yeah. So there are probably hundreds of thousands of quizzes you can find. Some are disguised as not everyone calls their quiz a quiz.
Yeah.
But one example that sticks out to me is a company called Revolution Golf, and I think they were acquired by someone bigger. But they had a 6-question quiz selling a $17 info product for golfers, and they made millions of dollars from this one quiz.
Crazy.
And all it did was identify. The quiz was like how to get an extra 150 yards off your swing, which, again, me and you don't know anything about golf, but it's easy to assume that every golfer wants to hit the ball further. And so it's a benefit-driven, results of that quiz or assessment. And they just asked 6 questions on, basically details on their swing, how far they typically hit it, what they struggle with, and it like assesses their answers. Yeah. And then it took them to a $17 info product sales page, and yeah, they did millions of dollars.
Crazy.
And it was such a simple. There's actually a YouTube video on it. If you type in Revolution Golf quiz funnel, you should find it. And
check it out. It's crazy. Yeah, it's mind blowing. And I saw. I think I saw it was a lecture by Neil Patel, and he also mentioned that the fact that people interact with your website, it creates a certain momentum, and they also start trusting you more. And since they are more engaged and they are not passive, just reading the sales letter, it increases the chances of them taking more actions. So even if you convey some content, you can also convey the content or the sales pitch or the persuasion, but incorporate it into a quiz. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's interactive, and it's a great way to build authority because it immediately positions you or your business as something or someone that knows something that your prospect doesn't. and it's an immediate authority builder.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I do have the back end of my quiz pulled up if you want me to.
Sure.
I could either do that now or record it and send it later, whatever you prefer.
If you can do it right now, it would be awesome.
Okay. And then, let's see. I think you need to
yeah, I already allowed
enable.
you to be enabled.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Okay. So this might look scary just because until you know exactly what's going on, it looks a little crazy. But what this software tool allows you to do is create logic with your questions, meaning sort of like if-then statements. So if this person answers the question this way, I want them to get this next question. And it has these like really easy, drag and drop arrows, and you can connect different questions. But what I'm doing here is I have this quiz that it's basically, the main question is, identify leads that are falling through the cracks of your broken sales funnel. And so it's helping people identify why their funnel is not converting. And it asks a whole bunch of questions about how they do email marketing, because ultimately what I'm offering at the end is a free consultation for me to assess their email marketing strategy.
I see.
And so I ask questions that do two things. One is, like I said earlier, a journey of self-discovery. They want to know, and what I'm giving them is their quote-unquote hidden profit profile. They want to know what their hidden profit profile is. Where am I leaving money on the table? Why? How can I make my funnel convert more? The next thing that this quiz is doing is I've hidden questions that are beneficial to me. So questions like, tell me, when it comes to converting leads into clients, what is your biggest challenge or frustration? This is what I touched on earlier. And so I have some pre-written answers, like writing emails, keeping things organized. And then I have other, where they can type in their own problem or frustration. And then I'll show you the results page.
And do you embed this form into your website?
You can do a couple things. There's an embed code. There's also a link where you can send just a URL. But just to give you guys a quick example, so since this is in preview mode, it doesn't show the chart, but there's a dynamically generated chart here depending on their answers, and it gives them, they'll have their first name here, it'll give them their score, and then here's the sales letter where I put in, their name, I put in their job title, I put in their biggest struggle right here, and this is a super targeted sales letter for each person that goes through. And then my call to action is to book a call where I can help them, solve their problem. But yeah, you can embed this on a website.
This is so powerful. I really like the way you structured this, and you used their own answers. It makes a lot of sense, but many people maybe overlook this. But once you use the answers of your customers, so they feel better, the whole relationship becomes better, and makes a lot of sense. And I can imagine how powerful this could be also for e-commerce stores. So
insanely powerful, and you don't even need to get this complicated. You can just, people, like that golf example, Revolution Golf, you can have a very straightforward 6-question quiz with not much logic, where you're just helping educate them, and at the same time you are learning so much about them.
That's amazing.
And I want to show something real quick that's kind of cool. and it's a great way to build authority and sort of get the conversation going. You can have a chat in the
Nice.
beginning,
Uh-huh.
and instead of asking, for their name,
Mm-hmm.
Fill in the form so I can get your
Yeah.
name. If you ask them like this way,
Mm-hmm.
far more people will enter their name, and then you immediately have their first name, and you
Nice.
can start customizing the quiz.
Cool.
And it's it's
It looks
awesome.
really good. I'm using Typeform for my quizzes, and I think that from the first glance, Leads Hook looks much better and much more relevant to my needs than Typeform. Seems like much more
Okay, yeah, I
powerful.
haven't
Mhm.
I haven't used that one,
Mhm.
but it is insanely powerful. And
That's
here we
great.
have an active campaign integration.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can immediately send people to your email service provider. You can tell them, what list you want them to go to, hook up your form,
Cool.
and then there are Facebook events as well.
Nice. That's awesome.
And you could spend weeks in here,
Yeah, it's so
and
fun. Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, I
Is
agree.
there anything specific you want me
No,
to touch on? Or?
no. It's like just looks amazing, and it just people need to understand as you said, understand the customers and think about what is the best way to segment. What is the best way to segment your customers? Because at the end of the day, we mentioned that we want our customers to engage. This is important, but the most important thing is we want the quiz to give us as much data, relevant data as possible about our customers, because let's not forget that our goal is to get the conversion. So when you build the quiz at the get-go, you need to think what exactly is your goal, what do you want to learn about the customers, and how you want to segment them in the higher level. This is just something like when you go to build the quiz, what do you think about? Like, how do you decide how to build the quiz?
Sure. So I actually started with this question right here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an internal, this is just an internal label, what I called this.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's called a decision node. So for the goal of this quiz, I want to generate leads,
Mm-hmm.
and I really want to understand who is ready, for help, meaning like who knows that they have a problem and that they need help, and then who thinks, you know what, I got this under control. I don't need an email marketer, or maybe I've hired email marketers in the past and I got burned.
Yeah.
And so this question is so powerful because I can immediately identify who's ready
Mm-hmm.
for the offer and who's
Yeah.
not ready for the offer.
Mm-hmm.
So if this person says, I've hired an email marketer in the past, I got ripped off, that person's angry.
Mm-hmm.
They're not gonna want to see a sales page that says, hey, hire me, even though you don't know me, I'll be your next email marketer and I'll be better than your last.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work that way. So these people are not ready. And so really what I'm doing is I started with creating two buckets.
Mm-hmm.
People that have a problem, they know they have a problem and they're ready to get help for that problem. And then people who are basically turned off, they're going to need a lot more nurturing and completely different email communication before they're going to be ready to hop on a call with me and hire me. So that's what I started here. And again, for e-commerce businesses, maybe you start here with your products, and you have 3 different products, or however many products you have or you want to promote. Start with that and then work backwards and ask questions that are going to help you determine, where these people need to go, what product is right for them, when are they going to be ready to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And just doing these, doing things like this in your marketing strategy has an insane impact, both short-term and long-term. It's really, really powerful.
I agree.
And again, just asking questions, that are going to be entertaining for them to answer and educational for them, but also throwing in some questions that, is just important data for you to know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you touched upon two important points, in my opinion, that I was repeating. So don't just throw in questions in a random order. You should start with some sort of logic. And as you said, you start with segmenting the customers to which product is more relevant to them. And then you ask them like a question which is a bit lower in the funnel and a bit lower and a bit lower. You go down and you personalize. Each question needs to help you segment further the audience instead of just asking in a random order. So this is something that you said that makes a lot of sense in my opinion. And the other thing is entertaining. So you should make it conversational. Don't make it just boring because people will abandon the quiz. So keep that in mind.
Totally. Yeah, and that's a good point. And just something to remind yourself in all areas of your marketing strategy is don't think of it as a one-sided selfish thing where you're trying to extract all this data and extract money from your customers. You really want to think about it, in my opinion, as a conversation and really be empathetic to your customer and to your prospects and try as hard as you can to put yourself in their shoes of, the experience that they want, what they're going through, and truly try to help your market. In the quizzes like this and just in all areas of your marketing.
I agree. Yeah, makes total sense. I totally agree. And I want to move on and ask a few wrapping up questions, which I ask all our guests in the podcast. Just answer them as fast as possible or not as fast as possible. So is there any other books that you've read lately that really helped or you suggest people read? So obviously Russel Bronson stuff, but what else?
Yeah, I would recommend Russel Bronson, especially if you're starting out. A book I'm going to recommend that I haven't read. I've done a ton of research on this book. I'm going to get one for my birthday. It's really friggin' expensive, but Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz, which was written in the 60s, but it's widely known to be the most valuable book you can read as a marketer. A lot of people think, it's written in the 60s, it's not relevant, but it's human psychology and can really be a game changer for a lot of people. So I'm most excited for that. Another book I read recently was All Marketers Tell Stories by Seth Godin,
cool.
Which is a really good one. And then actually I would recommend The Ultimate Sales Letter by Dan Kennedy.
Cool. Yeah, so I'll also write them down in the show notes. I actually didn't read any of them, but obviously Russell I did, but I will check them out. What other tools, you mentioned lead hooks, what other tools do you use these days that are really good that you really recommend?
I highly recommend ActiveCampaign. I know Klaviyo is really popular, especially for e-commerce stores and Shopify. So from what I've worked with, ActiveCampaign is my favorite. I haven't used Klaviyo in depth, but I like ActiveCampaign for my purposes. I love lead pages. I would say Zapier is a must-have.
Zapier, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of those just requirements to hook up your softwares that don't naturally communicate with each other. I love Slack for communicating with teams and clients. I'm a big Google Suite guy. I use my Google Drive for everything.
Cool.
I know these are kind of generic softwares.
But it makes sense.
They're like the foundation of everything I do.
I agree. Makes sense.
And then Leads Hook and Hotjar is a good one for analyzing how people
and heat maps
on your page.
Heat map and session recording. Yeah, I use Lucky Orange, but it's the same.
Yeah.
Cool. And what would be your number one tip? Let's say I'm just starting out as a marketer. So what would be your number one tip? Was it to start understanding copywriting or getting better as tactical Facebook ads, or what is your number one advice you give to beginners? Even though we spoke about this during the podcast, but can you elaborate?
I would say completely immerse yourself in direct response marketing and be very careful who you follow. It's really easy to get attached to someone who's like relevant and current, but I would recommend studying the greats. So people like Eugene Schwartz or Gary Halbert, Dan Kennedy, and really immerse yourself in direct response marketing concepts and understanding like persuasion. Copywriting is always in the conversation, and understanding that first, and then really hunker down on the tactical strategies and the platforms and stuff. But the sooner you can grasp like buyer psychology and timeless marketing frameworks, the better off you'll be. And I think a lot of people shoot themselves in the foot by getting started, and they might read one book, or someone will come across their Instagram feed and they'll start listening to this one person. But honestly, in reality, that person is most likely regurgitating something that they heard from someone else.
For sure. Yeah.
And I do that too. Everyone does that. But the further back you can go, the better information you're going to get, because it's kind of like a long game of telephone where you have these old school marketers from like the 60s. And then like as time goes on, people kind of take those concepts and they make them their own. And some of that's good, but a lot of that's bad. So I would say go as far back as you can to navigate all the noise.
I agree.
And listen to the right people.
Yeah, I agree. It's all about understanding the principles. The methods are many, and the tactics don't really matter if you understand the principles. So
yeah, totally.
Awesome. So thank you very much, Tim. It was a real pleasure, really interesting, and I'm going to implement a lot of stuff that we talk about, especially quiz-related stuff. Where can people find you? Where can people reach out? Where can people follow you?
Sure. So launchpadcopy.com is a great place to start. My site is kind of under construction right now, but there should be a link directing you to like a relevant page where you can learn more about me and services I provide. And I'm always happy to hop on a call.
Cool.
Zero pressure, just value. And I love talking about this marketing stuff. So thank you so much for having me on here.
Sure. Awesome.
And yeah, launchpadcopy.com, there should be a link to get on my calendar if you want to talk things through. And
cool.
Yeah.
And also a quiz, maybe a quiz. People will be able to go through your quiz.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually just published that. So there should be a link on there somewhere. Go through the quiz.
Yeah, we will share the quiz, and maybe people can copy from you and duplicate, and also.
Totally, yeah.
Cool.
It's
great.
hard though. It's hard. I will say, sorry, one thing. A lot of people talk about, funnel hacking, where you basically find a sales funnel online that's proven to generate good results, and you try to model it. But with the quiz, good luck funnel hacking a quiz, because as you saw earlier, there's so much behind the scenes logic, and it would take you like a million years to have all this.
It's another important factor which also comes to mind when dropshipping, because people are so scared when they are dropshipping that the competitors will find out what they are selling and the funnel. But if you have the quiz, there's no way to funnel hack the quiz, because it has so many different pathways and logical tests. So another aspect that why quizzes make a lot of sense.
Totally. Yeah, awesome. Absolutely.
Cool.
Highly recommend using them for your drop shipping business for sure.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.